time. So here we are. We're now going to be having a look at this situation about not only Black Lives Matter, but George Floyd. 1 year on, what does it mean? What has happened in the year since he was sadly killed? So on this day, May the 25th, 2020, George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man, was killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota, after being arrested for allegedly using a counterfeit bill. During the arrest, we know that this man, Derek Chauvin, rested his knee or placed his knee upon George Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes. And it was almost like, you know, watching somebody being lynched literally on TV. 2 other police officers were present and in attendance. There was also J. Alexander Quing and also Tom Lan, who were present and watching whilst this was going on. Now, I'm sure you all see it, and I don't need to play the video, and I don't need to, remind you of what it looked like as we watched those horrific scenes unfold on TV. But one of the things that really did take place was that this action caused widespread protest right across the United States. In fact, if I give you the timeline of what happened since the 25th of May last year, it just puts things into context. So on the 25th of May, George Floyd was killed. 26th of May, the street protests started in Minneapolis and they swiftly turned into civil unrest. It was followed by days of rioting, looting, burning, and leading to a state of emergency being declared. Demonstrations spread to at least 140 other United States cities. May the 28th, the first UK solidarity protests as Black Lives Matter banners were held outside the US Embassy here in the United Kingdom. There were demonstrations also in Cardiff, Manchester, Liverpool. As we moved to the 3rd of June last year, 10,000 people defy social distancing rules at the Black Lives Matter demonstration, which was held in Hyde Park. If we move to June the 7th, there was a protest in Bristol which ended with a statue of the slave trader Edward Colston being dumped into the harbour, and it sparked debate about the memories and memorials given to figures that were linked with slavery. June the 13th, Winston Churchill's statue in Whitehall is boarded up after being targeted. Far-right activists vow to protect the monument but clash with anti-racists. June the 16th, Boris Johnson takes Dr. Tony Sewell, tasks Dr. Tony Sewell with a commission on race and ethnic disparities to look at race inequalities. That report was written by or chaired by him for the government. Let's go to June the 17th last year, and you'll find that Aston Villa played a match against Sheffield United. And it was at that match that the players decided to take the knee in support of Black Lives Matter movement for the first Premier League match to be played after the lockdown. So you can see how it's all beginning to unfold. As we move to June the 22nd, Burnley Football Club fans, there's a Burnley Football Club fan who flies a banner with White Lives Matter over the Manchester City Etihad Stadium before the match. Burnley criticised that fan, who is responsible, and his employers sack him. So there's an interesting thing that happened there. 16th of March, let's move to 2021. The Sewell report finds that no institutional racism is found to be, here in the UK, and he's accused of a possible spin on slavery. And Boris Johnson admits that he does not agree with every word of that report. And finally, if you go to April 20th of this year, Derek Chauvin is found guilty of the murder by the court in Minneapolis, and people gather in for a Remembrance Day for George on that same day. So that's just a very quick potted summary of what's happened over the last year. But we know that through television, through radio, through the media, this thing has gone worldwide. There's been so much press coverage, and some of us must be probably a bit fed up of this now. But what's changed? What's happened? What's different? Well, the one thing I can say is that there's been much debate about what has taken place. And a lot of it's been fueled through the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, just to give you a little context on this, Opal Tometi, Alicia Grazza, and Patrice Cullors, these were the ladies who were the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter movement. And it was just a social media campaign to start off with. It was founded in 2013. And these ladies started the movement because it was in response to the killing and the acquittal of the person who killed Trayvon Martin. Now, Black Lives Matter has now gone on to become a global network foundation, and in the US, and it's in the UK, and it's also in Canada as well. And their mission is to eradicate white supremacy, build local power, to intervene in violence inflicted on Black communities by state and vigilantes. There's a bit more to their mission, but that's enough to know what it is that they're about. But what has it done in the year? What's changed in the year? What's different? I think the one thing that has happened is awareness has been raised. I think there's no question about that. Awareness has been raised. We are now having conversations about some critical issues. But is there change? And if there is change, is it happening fast enough? And more to the point, what can we do to make a difference? So those are some of the things that we'll be grappling with when we get into our breakout rooms. I've got two key questions which I'm going to invite you to talk about in the breakout rooms. But just before we go to that, let's just see what has happened, because I know that whenever we talk about Black Lives Matter, there are some people who say, well, you know what, all lives matter. All lives matter. So surely, it can't be just about Black people. Well, yes, all lives indeed do matter. But I think the key thing here is we're starting from a different position. Some people start from a position of underrepresentation. And, there are other people who say things like, well, Earl, I wasn't there when slavery took place. And I wasn't there when, the empire was being built. I wasn't there when the trade triangle was taking place. I wasn't there. So why are you saying that all lives don't matter? Well, I'm saying all lives do matter. I mean, I also say, were you there when England won the World Cup? Were you there in World War I? Were you there when we won the World War II? Were you there when the COVID vaccine was being discovered? And the key thing why I'm saying that is because we often like to pay attention and associate with things which are great and really British, and we can be proud of it. But often what we don't do is we don't associate with some of the things which are negative. And therefore, all I'm saying here is that we have to recognize that there are some good things that we've done here in the United Kingdom and across the world. And there are also some negative things, and we have to balance this story with the truth. And some of those truths are hard to accept. They're hard to take on board. They create difficulty. And it's for us to wrestle with some of that difficulty and to come to terms with it and to realize that we can make a difference and we can make amends where necessary. But let's talk about these 4 key areas where there is a disparity between what happens in Black lives and what happens particularly in certain white lives. We'll look at these 4 areas of life expectancy. We'll look at health. We'll look at injustice, and we'll look at a few things to do with employment. So if I start here, I'm going to allow you to unmute your microphones and shout the answer out, because I'm going to give you some statistics here. Life expectancy. In Black lives, life expectancy is apparently shorter, but by how much? In its 2017 report, Public Health Outcomes Framework, the Health Equity Report said that Public Health England found that men living in the most deprived areas had what? What number of years do you think men living in the most deprived areas had? It's somewhere between 1 and 10 years. But if you could just open your microphone, shout down the microphone, and just give me a number between 1 and 10. What do you think the life expectancy was? The life expectancy which was going to be less in men living in some of the most deprived areas was going to be? Just somebody shout out. 7 years, thank you. 8 years, thank you. 5 years, thank you. Keep going. 6 years, keep going. Give me another one. 9 years. Wow, wow, wow. Let me give you the answer. It's actually 9.2 years. Have a look at that. Public Health England found that men living in the most deprived areas had 9.2 years less life expectancy than those from the least deprived areas across the United Kingdom. What do you think that figure was for women? Again, open your microphones. Shout out the answer. It's okay if you get it wrong. Shout the answer out. What do you reckon it was for women? If it was 9.2 for men?
3.
3 for women? 5?
4.
6, 7, 8. Okay, if I were to take an
10.
average, the average sounded there, right, about 4.25. That's what it sounded like. The actual answer is 7.1 years. That's how much the life expectancy was shortened by for women. So that's just a little bit about the disparity between particularly Black people and white people in terms of life expectancy. Let's have a look now at mental health. Here's another major theme. Black people are more than how many times more likely to be detained under the Mental Health Act? Anybody, any ideas on that one? Again, just open your microphones. Shout a number. How many times more likely? 4 times more likely.
9.5.
About 5 times.
9.5.
9 times. Wow. Give me one more figure. Let me hear.
4.
7.
4, 7. Thank you.
20.
The actual answer on 20. Wow. Well, okay, that's a high figure. The actual number is 3 times. Black people are 3 times more likely to be detained under the Mental Health Act than white people. Let me give you one last statistic. Let's talk about, let's just go a bit further. Let's go on injustice. Black people serve prison sentences which are what percentage higher than their white counterparts? What do you think? For young Black adults, what do you reckon it is? How
80%.
much? 80%.
20.
Wow, 20%.
70%.
70%. Well,
50%.
50% is the correct answer. So Black people will serve prison sentences which are about 50% longer than their white counterparts. So the average length of that sentence for young Black adults, what do you reckon that was? What's the average length of the time that they're in prison? Anybody, any ideas? Shout out again after 3, 2, 1.
5 years.
How many months? Months, go months.
5.
5 months? What's the average prison
10
sentence?
months.
10 months.
8 months.
5 years.
Keep going.
8.
8 months, 11 months. Here we go. The average sentence for a young Black adult was 28 months. 28 months. This is just to heighten our awareness about what disparities do exist. Now, if I compare that to our white young adults, it's 19 months for, compared to white young adults. Now, here's the last statistic on this one is young Black defendants are twice as likely also to be denied bail. So they don't even get the opportunity to have bail. So there's just some interesting statistics. We're going to move to employment now. In 2018, Black people had the highest unemployment rate of any ethnicity. Any idea? Anybody, any idea as to what that rate of unemployment was?
6%.
9%.
6%. What was that? Somebody said last?
20.
9.
9% is the, oops, sorry about that. 9%. I've gone the wrong way, forgive me. Yeah, the answer was 9%. There's 9%, which is more than twice the white population, which is 4%. And we get that data from the national statistics that show that we also get that data from the Office of National Statistics, which show that in 2018, nearly 67% of the black population was employed compared to 76.4% of white. So this is just some statistics which are going out there, which show you that it's not necessarily equal. Many black people are starting from a position which is less than favorable. And I want to pick up on one particular area of employment. It's employment in sport, particularly in football, because about 25% of the players who play in the Premier League and the Football League, they're black. Now, based on current figures, what percentage of managers you reckon are in the top 4 divisions that are black? Again, just one last time, shout your numbers
1%.
out.
Less than
1%.
0.2.
0.2.
3%.
2%.
How interesting. So now we're looking at the number of black managers, and it's actually 6.5%. There's only 6 people out of 92 clubs in the entire football league that are of people of color. Only 6. So here's an area where we could do significantly better because there's a high population of people that we could start with. So I just want to point out that there is a great piece of work to be done, but the Football League are actually giving it a really good go. They're trying. You will hear that there are some great slogans out there in the football world. For instance, you've got "Say No to Racism." It's all about respect. You'll see it on their shoulders. You'll see it on the hoardings. You'll see it all throughout the Football League. You'll see "Kick It Out," tackling racism and discrimination. These slogans are great. You'll see "No Room for Racism." If you look on Sky Television or any of the channels that show football, they'll have so very many kick it out statements and statements which are all about anti-racism. And you'll see the players and the league have gone as far as endorsing taking a knee. This was started by Colin Kaepernick over in the United States, and players will take a knee. Now, what I believe this is more about is sloganism. John Barnes was talking on TV just a couple of days ago, and he was saying this is all sloganism because it does encourage the conversation to be had. No question about it. It does encourage a conversation. But when a player then refuses to take a knee, what do you think the discussion is then about? We've noticed that Wilfried Zaha, for instance, he now has decided not to take a knee. He's a player who plays for Crystal Palace. And now the conversation is more about, well, why didn't Wilfried Zaha take a knee? So it's not necessarily about kicking racism out of football. It's about you're not doing the actions. And it's about the slogans. And we have to push past the slogans to get to real action. And I would really like to know, well, what can we do that's going to not only help us take action, but what can increase the rate and the pace and the delivery of action? So those are some of the things that I'd really like you to consider again when you're in your breakouts. Now, just before you go to those breakout rooms, I just want you to recognize this. There's some great work which has been done in the United States regarding microaggressions and how to overcome that. And and really a lot of the work that is being done in diversity and inclusion and belonging talks and gives options to become an anti-racist. Now, not everybody's going to make the full journey to being an anti-racist, but I love this diagram because it highlights that there are 3 key zones, and each one of us will fit in one of these areas. And you can see what the journey looks like. So in order to become an anti-racist, you might be in the fear zone, you could be in the learning zone, or you could be in the growth zone. Let me give you an indication of what each of these zones looks and sounds like. If you're in the fear zone, you may well be thinking and saying things like, well, look, I deny that racism is a problem. I avoid the hard questions. I strive to be comfortable where I am. And I talk to others who look and think like me. So if that's generally what is your mindset. If that's what you're thinking, then it would indicate that you're probably in the fear zone. There's nothing wrong with being in the fear zone. It's not right or wrong. It's just an indication of what it is. In the learning zone, you may hear people say and feel this way. I recognize racism as a problem, or I recognize racism as a present and current problem. I seek out questions that make me uncomfortable. I understand my own privilege in ignoring racism. I educate myself about race and structural racism. I am vulnerable about my own biases and knowledge gaps, and I listen to others who think and look differently to me. So those are the kind of things that people do when they're in the learning zone. Already from what I've heard on this call, there's a lot of people in the learning zone. And there is one final zone which takes us to the more towards being an anti-racist, and that's the growth zone. I identify I may unknowingly benefit from racism. I promote and advocate for policies and leaders that are anti-racist. I sit with my discomfort. I speak out when I see racism in action. I educate my peers how racism harms our profession. There's another one. It says, I don't let mistakes deter me from being better. And there's a couple more comments, but I'm going to leave it just there. Because at the end of the day, there's certain personal things that we can take on board to be more like an ally and an anti-racist. And there's organizational things which can be done. We can deal with the discomfort and push forward. We can seek to understand other people's experiences. We can believe our Black colleagues, if you're in a senior leadership position or in a management position, we can believe what they say and help them. And yes, we will make mistakes along the way. We will still say things which are wrong, but, push through. It's okay. On an organizational basis, let's identify the harm, the impact on your people, measure, record, display the data, because what ultimately gets measured gets done. Get specific around internal and external actions. Be accountable. Be a company that builds capacity and commit. And finally, assess your systems and your norms and your policies. So, ladies and gentlemen, just with that information that I've given to you, I just wonder if I could set you into breakout rooms for a few moments. Now, what we're going to do is, there's quite a few people on the call, but I'm going to set up 4 breakout rooms. I think that will be about 10 people per room. And all I'm going to ask you to do is have a conversation around these 2 key questions. First of all, in your organization or in your profession, is there a desire to see change? So is there a desire to see change in your organization or your profession? And the second question is, what can we effectively do to accelerate change within our organization or our profession? So please just make a note of these 2 questions, because I'm going to be breaking you into breakout rooms, which is going to be for a 15-minute period. So is there a desire to see change in your organization or your profession? That's question 1. And secondly, what can we effectively do as individuals, as organizations, to accelerate the rate of change within our organization or our profession?